good afternoon, and thank you for joining us for today's ISCA ICAN webinar. Today we have Liz Koenig. She is a preschool through fourth grade school counselor at Marcus Elementary in the MMCRU school district up in Northwest Iowa. And today she is going to talk about pre-K through fourth grade brain research and talk about what she has done in her school counseling program. So before I turn it over to Liz, a couple housekeeping items. We're going to keep everyone on mute to reduce background noise. If you have a question, please type it into the question box on your webinar menu, and we are going to address those questions as they come in. So without further ado, Liz, thank you so much for joining us, and it's all yours.
Okay, great. Thank you. Yeah, I'm really excited to be a part of this. I love connecting with other counselors, and I feel blessed to be able to, come this afternoon and connect all over the state. This is my third year of being a school counselor, so I am definitely always up for learning and growing and stretching my program, and there's obviously lots of benefits for that. So one thing that's been important, I saw immediately, I started in a program that had a really quality school counselor program before me, including a really awesome elementary and middle school counselor before me as well. And so I had this benefit of coming in on a program like that. Character education was a big deal. And that counselor, including my program too, gets to go into every classroom once a week. We're on a 5-day cycle. And so it was a blessing to come in on that. The first year I was here, I did stick with those pillars of character themes. And, you know, I didn't want to totally reinvent the wheel. That's what the previous counselor was going with. So I did too. And every month we focused on one pillar of character. I saw lots of benefits in that, and I still feel very passionate about putting those vocabulary words into our school in different ways. We do a kid of character every week. That's something that has been withstanding since I've been here too. So every Friday morning we pick a kid of character, somebody that is nominated by their peers or teachers to show responsibility, fairness, kindness, citizenship in some way, those pillars of character. But my second year here, I was feeling more stretched, if I just want to keep using that word, in the area of social emotional learning and the benefits of maybe expanding off of just not only these character words, but really practicing. And I feel like there's a lot of similarities between character education and social emotional learning. But I really felt passionate about teaching practices. And so a big topic to me were things like self-regulation, or as I've learned, like even in this last year, the essence of like co-regulation, self-awareness, self-control, personal, emotional understanding, vocabulary, critical thinking, problem solving, resiliency, play skills, social growth, which something that I have continued in these 3 years of being here is with the socialthinking.org concept. That whole website I feel very passionate about in early elementary. I have their books and their curriculum and some other tools that we use along with our special ed department. So I highly would recommend social thinking. Obviously, zones of regulation comes out of that. We've just started dabbling in that in our school as a whole. But I love the concept of thinking about you, thinking about me. That's a social thinking book out there, and it's just focused on this social awareness. You know, we have little guys that are you know, pretty egocentric, which is developmentally appropriate. But I do feel like it's a blessing to be in this early elementary setting and really stretching that social thinking. So out of that came this real passion and interest into brain research. So last January, February, March, I really dove in deep to this in across the board, preschoolers through fourth graders, and giving them pretty big vocabulary, but I saw a lot of success in it. And so it just fueled my fire with this idea of teaching about how our brain works and why that would be important for me to know. So that's what I was going to talk about today. That's a little bit about my story of being here at Marcus Elementary. There was just this short 2-minute video that I actually just found in this last week. And I thought it kind of explains some of these social emotional concepts and why I teach about the brain. So I don't know if this is normal or not, but I thought this would be kind of fun to show you all. So I think it's up on the main screen, and then I will play it here. It's off of actually a Facebook resource that I use. I think this is off of Grow Therapy. If you search Grow Therapy Child and Adult Mental Health on Facebook, they have a lot of really cool resources. And I think this is one of the videos they had. So we will play it, see if it works for all of you, and then we'll go on. So 2 minutes.
Successful people have strong self-regulation skills. They use them every day. The skills help them consciously direct, sustain, and shift their attention when necessary. They help them monitor and manage their thoughts, behavior, and emotions in this complicated world of ours. 3 of the self-regulation skills, known as executive function skills, are cognitive. These are used to monitor and manage attention, thoughts, and behavior. A 4th self-regulation skill is the ability to monitor and manage emotions. These skills are not inborn, but they are teachable, and we depend on them every day, especially when the going gets rough. Just like adults, when students are upset or angry, it's hard for them to use their executive function skills because their strong emotions take over. This can also make it difficult for them to listen, remember rules, and stay focused on learning. So, learning to monitor and manage emotions allows students to recognize their strong feelings and use strategies to calm down. Then, they can use their executive function skills again. And research shows students with strong self-regulation skills have higher academic achievement and are less likely to act in impulsive or aggressive ways, or to withdraw when overwhelmed. They're also more likely to get along well with others and have strong social skills. Students with poor self-regulation skills can have emotional and behavioral problems and academic trouble and are more likely to be expelled from school, starting as early as preschool. When students learn and practice self-regulation skills, they can build academic achievement, social competence, and positive growth throughout their lives.
Okay, so as you can see, it's a second step video. Let's see here. So I'll just pause that. And I was going to have it so you could see my face because I'm a very face-to-face person. So I think you may be able to see me. Nope. I wanted to stop that. Okay. What do you think? Britannia, can you see me?
I can see you.
Okay. I just thought that video does a great way of explaining just a little bit of a background with one topic with self-regulation, emotions, and executive functioning, but it does give more of a behind the scenes of what's going on in our children's brains that sometimes we, you know, of course, as counselors, we know this, but there's more than just meeting the kid at their behavior, but there's all this going on behind them. And it's just good to keep that perspective. So that leads into my brain unit. Last year, I've showed some counselors this, but I inherited a clear plastic bag like this that actually had some neat materials in it about kind of like tolerance and the differences, uniquenesses in people, but it was old, and so I threw it out actually. But I like this clear bag, and I like the idea of this clear bag because it's been now known as my brain backpack, and it kind of whets the kids' appetites to what I bring in it each day, and then some things I keep in it all year, or during this unit, I mean. So yeah, I kind of like that idea. So not that you have to have one, but it does really, it's a fun thing to do. Last year I borrowed a brain model, but this year I bought one. It's kind of surprising how many schools, I don't know, I asked around to see who would have a brain model that I could use, and not too many high schools had them. So I had to go like 30 minutes away to find one. So I just got this one off of Amazon, and it was actually not very expensive, and I liked it because it had both parts. So this year it's been really nice to show the kids what our brain really looks like, and we talk about how it has an outside, and it also has an inside, because of course we're going to talk about our amygdala and where that is. That is way deep down inside. And then this year, different than last year, we have talked a lot about our upstairs and our downstairs brain, which you could talk about, you know, in more adult terms of primitive brain. And we talk about how even before we were born, this little, you know, this base of our brain was starting to form, and it's been there with us a long time. So it's just kind of a nice thing to have a model. So I think it's pretty important. Another great resource that kind of started me off was this Mind Up curriculum that I'm sure you have heard about. I would totally recommend it. My this is the K2 or preschool through 2. There is a 3rd and 4th also, and I think it's in my closet. But anyways, the curriculum comes with a brain map, which I also think is neat. I used it a lot last year, but as you can see, it's out of Scholastic, so it's really a neat thing. But as you can see, it has these main areas of the PFC and the amygdala and the hippocampus, and then on the back it has actually some fun just different facts about the brain, and I used that for a bulletin board last year, which the kids really liked. So I would highly recommend that Mind Up curriculum if you already don't have it. I know it's a popular thing now, but yeah, those two things, my brain model last year and this Mind Up curriculum, is really where it started from. The other, I guess, one resource I had last year to go off of right away was Your Fantastic Elastic Brain. And again, this goes through the PFC and the amygdala and hippocampus, but I liked it because it also goes into what your cerebellum does and your cerebrum, and then it has some parts about your neurons, and I will talk a little bit about that later. But those 5 parts, your PFC, cerebrum, hippocampus, amygdala, and cerebellum, last year I really wanted my 3rd and 4th graders especially to know those different parts of the brain and how they interact and what their purposes are. And I felt like we did that. It was great. They had that to go on when we kind of changed a little bit of what we were doing this year. So I taught them what each part was by using resources like this, or obviously just direct teaching and some creative ways of showing what those parts do. But we also made brain caps. And I have this resource. I'll see how I could even send that out to you through the chat. But this brain cap was really fun to do with my, we actually did 2nd, 3rd, and 4th graders last year, because I knew my 4th graders were moving on to middle school anyways, and I just wanted them to get out, you know, I wanted them to understand and have this information. So I actually did it with all of them. And these brain caps were really fun to talk about where these pieces are. It gave them a visual, and then actually it was my, one of my modes of evaluation, because the 3rd graders went over to our anatomy and physiology class in the high school and broke them up with high schoolers, and they actually taught them about what they knew about how their brain works with these 5 parts. So that was pretty neat last year to use as an assessment piece of that. And the high schoolers had not gone through their brain unit yet, and the nervous system, so it kind of whetted the high school appetite too for what they were going to start learning about. So I hope to do that again in these next few weeks with my 3rd graders this year. So that brain cap I will try to put on our chat, so you have that, because I really thought that was a cool way of keeping the kids busy and not just, you know, boring brain lessons. But they were really proud of their little brain caps too. Yeah, the start of my unit last year, I really got on board with teaching the kids about their amygdala. And I'm assuming you all know about these parts of the brain, and especially this amygdala. I did not really learn about it though until I got to college. And I told the kids that. Of course, that's fun for elementary kids to know they're learning something that I didn't learn until I was, you know, 19. So this amygdala, this little bitty almond size piece way down deep in our brain, and the amazing things about it was, yeah, just an exciting thing to teach, and the kids really got on board with it quickly. Another tool I used is, I'm sure you've seen, is with the brain hand. So last year, again, preschool through 4th grade, they all learned how to fold their hand in such a way. And we actually use both hands, and we put them together because I, of course, want the kids to know they have 2 halves of their brain. They have 2 amygdalas in each half. And what this brain hand model comes from, which again is another big resource I used leading up to this unit, is the Whole Brain Child, Dr. Siegel. And that whole book is really applicable for us as school counselors, let alone as a mom. So that is where I got this brain hand idea. But what happens, our amygdala gets upset, and it happens, I've read that it happens faster than the speed of light. Our amygdala gets shook up, and it is, I've learned more about it, I feel like, this year than I did even last year, but it gets shook up when we get angry or sad or scared, these strong emotions. So last year I had a glitter bottle like this, and we would talk about, and even my 4-year-olds knew exactly what I meant by this, that our amygdala gets shook up. And they could, you know, repeat that again and again for me. So what do we do about it? We all get mad as adults, as kids. We can all get frustrated, upset about something, scared, sad. But what are we going to do about it? And last year we talked a lot about ways to calm down. So this leads into mindfulness practicing. And just like if I hold this bottle still and I pause and I breathe, the glitter will settle down. Pausing and breathing sounds a lot easier than how easy it really is in real life. So we have to practice this. So I used last year, and then of course this year too, we have really gotten into practicing. Every time we get together, we do a different mindfulness moment. And usually, especially last year, I really focused in on our 5 senses. And every week was a little bit different, thinking about each sense. And I could tell you more about that. But this year, I have done more grounding activities with my preschool through 4th graders. There's a lot of research about obviously simple things like taking deep breaths, but there's really good research about just being in the moment and noticing what's going on around us, and still finding the calm in that. So yeah, grounding has been something we've been talking about more this year. So this amygdala was the big concept that I wanted all my kids to know last year, let alone just those different parts of the brain. But this year, I really want to tell you guys about Hey Sigmund, this mental health counselor in Australia has these books called Hey Awesome and Hey Warrior. I think Hey Warrior is in my backpack. I don't know. But my kids were super excited this year because of course they knew we were going to talk about our brain again. I got a stuffed amygdala, if you can all see this. He's super cool. And of course my kids love him. But he teaches us a little bit different than what I got into last year, even more so, of that our amygdala is not a bad piece of us. I feel like it's easy to kind of go down that road. These are bad feelings, but they're not. They're just feelings, and they come and go. We all have them. So this warrior, he teaches us that the amygdala, which of course he's in the shape of an amygdala, he just has hands and feet, and we talk about how it doesn't really look like one, but he teaches us that he is there to protect us. He's wearing a bow and arrow. Our amygdala is a healthy piece of our brain and our body, and he's there to say that, you know, something is wrong. Something's not right. And this leads into perfectly what I've really gotten into this year of our upstairs and downstairs brain, which is another Dr. Siegel concept, because amygdala will get upset, but it's just not a place we want to stay. We want to move from our downstairs to our upstairs. And so we have done many lessons this year more on that concept of moving from our downstairs to our upstairs and what that feels like and what that looks like, feeling what is going on in our body when our amygdala is in control. And then walking the staircase up is an image of those calm down strategies, breathing or using grounding techniques, and that moves us to our upstairs, which I felt like last year the kids already had some awareness of their PFC because they knew that vocabulary well from last year. Again, preschool through 4th grade, they knew their amygdala and they knew their PFC, and they knew the difference between them. So this year was really neat that I could go off of that and really talk about the differences, and then what it feels like to move to our upstairs brain, where we can use our thinking to problem solve, to talk calmly, to use I feel sentences, all of those good social thinking skills that does not happen in our downstairs brain. So that is a little bit of the whole picture. Like I said, last year I went more into some of the vocabulary of our brain, and I felt like that was purposeful, and then some mindfulness. But this year we have gone into knowing that vocabulary, then I felt like I was able to go into, after a review, of course, go into more of this evidence-based research that just shows the power of practicing mindfulness, that shows really getting into what this feels like inside of our body and real world experiences. Because again, I'm very passionate about practicing anything that we're learning about. So yeah, I'm kind of looking over some of my notes to see if I missed anything. I did do a little pre-test from last year. We chewed bubble gum, of course, while we took the pre-test to see where they were at. And it was out of that pre-test that I thought, you know, they really know quite a bit about these pieces of their brain, but I wanted them to know more about how they work together, and how when our amygdala is in control, it's there to protect us, but it really does give us the sensation that we are not in control of our brain. So when that happens and I have those feelings inside of me, this is the time where I need to use one of the tools in my toolbox. Pause, practice the pause, whatever it might be. Maybe it's star breathing. And then I'm moving to my upstairs brain, and now I can go and make that decision or that choice or approach my friend. Yeah, I've seen a lot of good in that. And I'm so proud of my preschoolers. You know, they will come up to me and say, my lid was flipped. Again, this is the brain hand concept. My lid was flipped. I took some deep breaths. I used star breathing. I blew on my hatch, whatever it would be. And my lid got put back on. And then I talked to my friend. I'm like, wow, this is great. So I've seen a lot of good things come out of that. Yeah, so that kind of was where I'm at with the brain itself, with the pieces of it, the parts of it, upstairs, downstairs, and then some of these how our brain works and these pieces inside. The latter part of my unit then goes into what makes up our brain with neurons. And that was really exciting last year. My co-counselor over in the other elementary and middle school found some neat resources too, and we went into a big growth mindset and knowing I want kids to know and understand how these neurons connect, the synapses that happen, and the neuroplasticity that is real, you know. So just today I was teaching about neuroplasticity in the 3rd grade, and we bring a big green stretchy band. We talk about how that is exactly, if we had a visual of what is happening in our brain, this is what it looks like. It's stretching and growing, and it will continue to do that until the day we die. We're never too late to learn something new, but it has a lot to do with how we, if our amygdala is telling us this is too hard, we can't do this, we can talk back to it and say, I'm going to try this. You know, neurons that fire together wire together. So that was my lesson today in 3rd grade, was showing how the way we talk to ourselves gets stronger. Whether it's negative or positive, it's going to get stronger, whatever we're saying to ourselves. So that all has to do with the neuroplasticity. So that goes into that whole concept, and the growth mindset. So yeah, so I've been really excited about these lessons and the unit as a whole. Like I said, I love using literacy, so I have some different books here I could list off too, and ways that I use them. Some of them came out of, well, one specifically came out of the Mind Up curriculum, the book Ferdinand. I love that book. There's a great movie too, but the book is great on its own, and talking about the practice of staying calm. He started that when he was a little calf, just like we're starting practicing it as, you know, elementary students, because when we get older, we can still go back to those practices of taking deep breaths, and before we go into this you know, difficult or even brave situation that we're going to go into. So yeah, I could list off some other books too, but does anybody have any questions or thoughts? Because I was hoping we could even have more of a conversation too, if anybody else has ideas or resources that they have found too. So.
First question, what all is in your brain bag?
Okay, yeah, I have my, well, this year I have my brain model and my stuffed amygdala, along with those books, because the books themselves, the Warrior book and the Hey Awesome book they're kind of long, and they're really, really good though. I would highly recommend them, and they have great illustrations. So for the little kids, I would just use kind of the illustrations of it, and throughout a few weeks of lessons. And then, but I read them to my 3rd and 4th graders, because just the language it uses it's really beneficial for upper elementary, and even middle school and high school could get a lot out of these Hey Awesome and Hey Warrior books. I also have a bell, a chime. I got this from my friend Laurel. She has a chime, and I bought one immediately after she showed me what happens or told me in her hallways when she does her chime. And because my kids too have been trained in this, they will, you know, even 4-year-olds will just come to a complete stillness. And it's just really neat to see. We talk about how we don't have very much quietness in our life. Usually when we come home, we turn on TV, or we turn on the tablet, or we're doing something loud in a family, or there's always just loud around. So it's really cool and healthy, I feel like, for our kids to just sit in silence for just a little bit. And we talk about that mindful listening. So this is what it sounds like. So it's kind of like a tuning fork. It lasts a long time. So we, singing bowls are another thing. I haven't gotten a singing bowl, but this is a great way of listening to that sound. The kids are just, you know, dead quiet the whole time. And I love it, because I just think about all the good things that our brains are doing during that quiet time. So I always have that with me, because the kids love to do that if we do it at the beginning or end. These are my perspective glasses. It goes along with neuroplasticity, the way I can put on my my positive talk, or I can put on, sometimes I use these actually for the negative talk. They're blue. So things like anxiety, when we're talking about that, I talked about that with 4th graders a couple weeks ago. And anxiety is a little bit, that's what the Hey Warrior books really go into. It's awesome. But this concept, I think Counselor Carrie has a really cool lesson on it too, and I think I got it from her too, of yeah, putting our different lenses on. When we're feeling a strong feeling like anxiety, it's hard to just take them off, and especially like when we're meeting a friend too that's struggling with anxiety, and we're looking at the same thing, but she just has this different lens on, and we got to have empathy about that. So I have this year too, I got a the handy brain model from Amazon too. So this is something I always carry around with me. You can, of course, we put it on and it shows very, you know, just what I talked about with our hand model, but it shows the words on there in different colors of where our amygdala is at, and these different places of our brain. I have a couple of different mindfulness resources in here. This is one, some activity cards that kids can just choose from to start or end our time together. I always have my sensory or my glitter bottle in there. I have a couple things like this this one's not laminated, but I Am a Calm Down Hero. I could send this out to people too. This little book too just gives different ideas of having a mindful moment. And so this would be something I always have in my bag as well, that kids then to end with, we can pick one and we do that. And then I just always usually have the book I'm going to read, if that is what we're doing. Let's see what else. I think that's about it, what I have in my brain backpack always. So yeah, I don't think I'm missing anything out of there. Model visuals are so important, obviously. So anything else I'm using, I put in there for the day. We do mindful tasting, so the kids love it when they see like Starburst in there or something. They know we're going to do, you know, tasting. And again, that's all done in quiet and mindful chewing. Mind Up goes into some of that. Yeah, it's just kind of fun. Any other questions? Just another good book I got this year, Worry Says What. First and second graders are who I've read it to. And it gives this concept again of a little bit with worry and anxiety and what happens and how it kind of takes up a camp in your brain. And this little girl decides that she's done letting worry be the boss. So then she does little bitty steps, because it's all about baby steps, right? Baby steps to not letting him be in charge anymore. And a really good thing she does that I've talked a lot about this year with kids is the way we talk to our brain. I feel very passionate about that this year. So that's what she does in the book, is instead of letting worry talk to her, she starts talking back to it. And that's just what we can do. There's a lot of research out there that I've read about that, of talking back to your brain. And actually, again, the neuroplasticity that happens with that is really exciting. So, yeah.
Have your teachers gotten on board with using the brain terminology?
Yeah. Some more than others. I have emailed, like last year, I emailed about the vocabulary words that I was using with all of them to get them more on board. I felt like last year was more of a trial year. This year, though, rubber meets the road, and I'm sure this can resonate with other people out there too, that I feel like it's kind of the wave of the future is behavior plans. We have younger and younger kids at our school that are being tested for behavior plans. 4, well, not really, this year we don't have 4-year-olds, but we do have several 5-year-olds. So these have just, again, been tools in our toolbox, along with social thinking, along with zones, some of these other tools that our special ed department uses. That's been a big deal, is to have my special ed department on board with these things. So they've done social stories with when our lid gets flipped, with talking about our amygdala specifically. I felt like it was important to me to teach the kids the actual brain terms. People have different ways of going about that. You can call it a watchdog. You could call it your thinker brain, could be your wise owl. But I'm like, if we're going to teach kids that anyways, let's just teach them about the PFC. They can get that as much as they can wise owl. So that's just a side note. But so yeah, I felt like there's been more in the younger elementary social stories and vocabulary being used with this. But I feel like it takes time, but I definitely try to get the knowledge out to my teachers. Many of them stay in the rooms for it too. So my principal loved it, all of this curriculum, because he liked that it was another component of science, and yeah, he's been on board with it from day one too, so that was a good thing. Any other questions or thoughts? Anybody else have resources to share that they have used? I have the track students running outside of my room now, so I'm sorry.
So anyone who wants to share resources or ask additional questions, go ahead and type them in. If you'd like to share via the microphone and talk, I can unmute you. Just raise your hand and raise your hand on the menu, and I can unmute you.
I'm going to put some of my resources on here too. Like I said, I do have some other books, but there were this brain, if you're interested in doing this brain cap with your students, like I said, I did it with 3rd and 4th graders last year. I think I'm going to do an every other year brain cap. This year I'm not necessarily doing that for them to show me what they know. But
another question come in.
Yeah.
Do you start this right at the beginning of the year, or do you do other things first?
No, I start the year off with social thinking. That curriculum, I now have both sets of books with that, so that's you know, a good 10 weeks. Last year I did start the year, or this year I started the year off with the older kids with Sanford Harmony, and there's definitely some good lessons that come out of that. I found that I couldn't really use it straight through, but there were some good concepts to use for my older classes with that too. That was similar to what I was doing last year. But I like to start the year off with whole body listening, which is again social thinking. I don't know, I'm totally trying to blank. But anyways, yeah, and then I did this last year in January and February and March, and that's what I'm doing again this year. I really like doing it this time of year. I feel like it's just fun and the kids get excited about it, and it's kind of a good time of year to get excited about something. So
Does anyone else have any questions for Liz this afternoon? We did have one comment that came in that just said that they love all the resources that you're sharing with the rationale for why you're using them. That's incredibly helpful to not only know that a resource is there, but why and how it can be used. So that comment came through.
yeah.
Can you share how you assess the learning from your program?
Yeah, last year, like I said, I used those brain caps, and then when they taught the high schoolers, 3rd graders taught the high schoolers, and then I actually had my 4th graders go down to show some of the younger grade levels. I think maybe kindergarten. I had them kind of opposite. I had them go to younger kids and show them what they knew and remembered. And could explain it in those two different kind of ways. I mean, as I learn and grow in this position, I feel like an evaluation and kids showing me what they know, I always need more information and ideas about data. It's just something I want to be better at. So I took it more as I was hearing this vocabulary out at recess or in the classrooms during free choice time, really those times where we are called in as counselors. I really loved being able to see the benefit of this coming out in those kind of informal, real world settings. And then of course, during my lessons, because we do a lot with, yeah, like I've been saying, real world scenarios or pulling out cards of what would we do when this happens and what would be going on in our body, and following that through to the end. I feel like I do a lot of informal assessment with those kind of topics. Yeah. This year, I did do a pre-test, like I said, so I was hoping to then do a post-test, of course, too. And there were a lot of kids that did well on this pre-test, but it was kind of surprising, the ones that did well and the ones that did not. And so obviously I knew we had room for growth, and then I'm hoping, to do this post-test to even show the kids too the ways that they learned or solidified some of this learning in their own life this year too. So I did want to have a little bit more data to go on, and I did this post-test modified version of it, 1st through 4th. Obviously, like 3rd and 4th had a little bit more in-depth questions and wanting to really know what they understood about like self-regulation skills and including, our brain. So anyways, yeah, I want to keep growing in that, though. I don't feel like I have that totally figured out of evaluating this unit. This is another resource I'll share that I sent out to teachers this year about how our brain forms, and from the base up, and again building that awareness of not just looking at a kid's behavior, but thinking, especially with at-risk homes, there are some really simple things like cross-lateral exercises that actually fast forward some of this development that this kid is lacking in. Really, I mean, brain science is just so cool to me. And yeah, I try to encourage teachers to use those brain breaks when possible, and just simple things like Go Noodle can just, yeah, it's really healthy when you involve brain science too. It's not just a fun break in our day. It can really help these kids that are lacking developmental skills in other ways too. So maybe I didn't push send. There you go. So this is called Brain Hierarchy When Your Child's Lower Brain Levels Are Weak. You can look at that one. It's from ilslearningcorner.com. It has a lot of really cool resources on there for teachers, I feel like. And let's see. This video you might have seen before. It's off of YouTube, but it's really great for 3rd and 4th graders and up to high school, I feel like. But it's called, What Happens When We Lose Control of Our Emotions. And it explains the brain model, and it's just done in a neat way. There's other YouTube videos that I've used as well. I didn't even put them all together here, but that just reiterate this lesson over and over, because I feel like it's another form of media and another way to grab their attention and things like that I use. So when it comes to growth mindset, I love The Most Magnificent Thing. If you've seen those books, After the Fall is a great one. What happened to Humpty Dumpty after he fell off the wall? It's so cute. For my preschoolers, they love The Little Engine That Could, and we do a little lesson for that. Giraffes Can't Dance. We go into what we can do and what we can't do yet. And then my co-counselor got into Ryan the Spy series, and that was really neat last year that I'm excited to go back into this year. So those are some other books that I've used for the growth mindset part. And then, yeah, some other resources. Sorry, I was trying to go back, but
can you repeat the name of the first book that you mentioned on growth mindset?
Yeah, The Most Magnificent Thing. Can you still see me, or are you seeing my screen?
We're seeing you.
Okay. I bet I look like an idiot. These are back here. Okay. Let me see here. I didn't have these out here, but this is The Most Magnificent Thing. It's a really fun book about, and then you can do some fun lessons on when we make mistakes. That's always been fun. This Beautiful Oops is really a fun book I found from, yeah, counseling resource day we had, and then giving kids a scrap of paper, like preschoolers through, you know, even these fourth graders love it. But yeah, you make them figure out something to do with it. Growth mindset. Again, not, you know, using our mistakes. That's exactly how our brain works. It works actually better with mistakes. And then After the Fall is really cute. What happens to him? How Humpty Dumpty got it back up again. So cute. Yeah. Again, The Whole Brain Child. I think I have it on my bookshelf, but The Whole Brain Child is a you know, adult book that I would highly recommend. There is some really, I don't know, with Facebook, there really are some cool page likes that I get a lot of resources out of, and then I can attach them to an email to send out to staff. But that Grow Therapy is one that is really good if you search that on Facebook. Children's Mental Health Rocks, they share some neat things. Conscious Discipline is something that the special ed team here and I are looking more into. Maybe some of you already use that. I'm really interested in training teachers more into conscious discipline and how I can be a part of that at our school. And then next year as counselors, we are prioritizing trauma-sensitive classrooms, and we've gone through an AEA training with that, and how we can build that awareness within our staff is going to be an exciting thing for us, which again all goes back to this brain research. Getting teachers on board with it can be really beneficial for as a whole school approach. It's not just that at-risk kid. We need to be treating every kid with the same approach. We all go through different forms of trauma one way or another, and different it varies. So yeah, I feel like it's important to have the whole school on board with it. We did a short PD last year on ACEs, which is also something as counselors we want to expose our teachers more to. The adverse childhood experiences our kids are coming out of, and how we can approach, like I said, our whole classroom with that sensitivity. Not only the at-risk kids. That's why I love that I can teach this brain research to my whole school, and not just individual or small group settings. So I am grateful for that. There's also some other ones on Facebook called Think Kids. It's like think : kids, lives in the balance, trauma-informed positive behavior support. We're not a PBIS school. We may be going down that direction, but this is just purely a Facebook-like that has really cool research-based articles that they share regularly. I get an email from ACEs Too High every day, and I would highly recommend that email. It's so good. It really just brings awareness to national issues of ACEs, and again, I think it goes right along with this brain research. So those are some other things I wrote down to share. So,
do we have any other questions for Liz this afternoon before we sign off? I've been writing down everything, all these resources, and they'll be posted with the recording of the webinar on the ISCA website. So in case you weren't able to write everything down as Liz was saying it, I've been trying to make a list. So
I just was looking over my notes. I'm such a talker anyways. We should be the best listeners in our school, right? But I was reading over my notes. A big thing to me, and I'm sure it is to all of you too, are the exposure our kids get, to social media. And it just is scary. It's like to this tipping point scary, I think. I have 4-year-olds that are, this has been since I have worked here 3 years now, which I know it's limited experience, but from day one, I met kids that have been just so conditioned to horror, scary video games that they watch on YouTube. And I'm sure you guys have, this resonates with you. It's just frightening. They're conditioned that it doesn't scare their amygdala anymore. And they'll tell me that. They said that, I had a 3rd grader say, no, my mom watches them with me. It doesn't shake up my amygdala. I'm like, well, it shakes up mine. But I teach the kids with this brain unit how I've read some really cool research about, our brains do not know the difference between what is real and what is not real. It is coming in and it's being processed, all of it as real. So we talk about that in a couple different ways. We talk about how those feelings we get when we are going to go in front of a big crowd, and that anxiety that comes from that. And then, of course, that's, again, that lesson of talking back to our brain and just making that connection grounds us, and we think of these positive things, and even visualizing what we're going to do, and just things like that can really help. But when it comes to these scary stuff that kids are being exposed to, I really feel like it's a thing I really emphasize whenever I get the chance to with these kids in a mass scale of these scary video games and movies. Violence obviously is included in that, and what that's doing on these children's brains really, I don't know, it just, last night it was really getting to me about it all. So I don't know, we need more discussion, I feel like, about that and how we can speak into that. It does kind of shake me up about it, but I like the kids to know, and I do feel like even my 3rd grader that was telling me he doesn't get shook up about it anymore, at least he's showing me he has an awareness that it used to be scary to him and now it's not. And that's a big deal. I'm really glad that he sees that awareness. But it's a conversation to continue of what can we do about it now. So yeah, bringing parents in on that is important.
any final questions for Liz? Okay, I think that's it. I want to thank Liz. Thank you so much again for sharing. And this is the first webinar that we've ever done where it's been all webcam and visuals, and I personally loved it. So thank you so much for being a trailblazer in that regard as well. And we'll get the recording and the list of resources mentioned posted to the website shortly. So thank you so much, Liz.
Thanks, Britannia. I'm so glad we could do this. It's great.
All right. Everyone have a great afternoon.
Yeah, you too.